I posted a video earlier this year looking ahead to Konami's 2024. In that video, I mentioned that the much maligned publisher could potentially release 4 titles this year to include the Silent Hill 2 remake, Metal Gear Solid Delta, Suikoden 1 and 2 remasters, and Contra Operation Galuga. I believe that out of these 4 titles, Contra Operation Galuga would be the easiest to mess up, given Konami's history with handling the franchise, and after being the story mode, arcade mode, and working my way through some of the challenges, I feel like it's safe to say that Konami did a solid job. This game by no means reinvents the wheel. It's as safe as a Contra game can be. It's a reimagining of the first title and features the run and gun gameplay the series is known for. It scales in difficulty as you progress, and outside of the 3 difficulty settings, you can select the danger mode, and this includes the classic one-hit mode or a modern mode in which you have a life bar. There's also a perk system in which you can earn points by playing through the different modes. You're able to purchase certain perks from the store that can assist you through your various playthroughs. Some perks can be character specific, but most of these available can be used by anyone, and they can be generally helpful. You can only have 2 slots available to each character, but this does allow for some strategy and customization. The perk I found myself using the most allows you to keep your weapon after losing a life, and this is incredibly useful because the game starts to throw you so many different challenges in later levels, and losing your most reliable ally can be a big pain. The perk store also includes characters, music, and a speedrun mode, but it's all fairly expensive, and by that, I mean 8,000 points per character expensive, which to me is insane, and you will need to absolutely love this game to work toward those characters. As solid as this game is, I had no interest in replaying the story mode, even if it just took over an hour or so to complete solo. Speaking of the story mode, it's fine. You're running and gunning through multiple stages that get crazier as you progress, and you fight some pretty interesting bosses. Some can be really easy, and others can be incredibly distracting with everything happening on screen. I'll admit it was nice to face simple bosses at the end of a challenging level, and if you're a fan of Super Contra and really like the vehicle levels, you're going to get a few here, and I think these are the real standouts of Operation Galuga. These can really feed on your nostalgia, and I like the different perspective cuts when you were making turns. It's actually a really cool effect. I don't have any real comments on the plot for the story mode. Just know that it gets batshit crazy and the game expects you to just go with it. I think the voice acting is pretty good for the most part, but you can also tell that this is a budget Konami title because the story is told with both in-game cutscenes in which you are able to move around your character some and also be attacked, which is really strange. There's a cutscene where I was just kind of moving around waiting for things to progress and I ended up getting killed because an enemy just appeared behind me. It was really weird. And there's also comic style panels, and these can be really hit or miss. Let's be honest, you're not really playing this game for the story mode, and that's completely fine. Arcade mode is your classic we don't need no story mode, and you're just here to earn a ton of perk store points for playing through this. So once you're past the story and you would just like to get through the game with little interruptions, go ahead and just burn through arcade mode. This was where I was really experimenting with different unlockable characters to determine if there were actually any differences between them, because in a lot of games that feature multiple characters, for some reason, there's not really any adjustments to them. They're just all kind of the same, just different skins. But here, happy to report that there are changes. They're really minor, but they're there. And these can include traversal abilities like having a grappling hook or the ability to hover for short periods, or small weapon adjustments like being able to charge your laser, which is just creating this massive beam, and it does so much damage, and it's very entertaining to use. These are really minor in the grand scheme of things, but it does provide a reason to play as other characters. Like I said, this game doesn't really try to reinvent the wheel, it just adds certain modifications to make it more modern. There's really not much change from the series' established formula, and to be fair, there just really doesn't need to be. The biggest change to the game that I saw was that you can overload weapons, and basically you acquire a primary and a secondary. Weapons can be leveled up to increase weapon damage or create other secondary effects, and each of these weapons come with a different overload ability. The laser, for example, can be overloaded and that will slow down time, and the machine gun, for whatever reason, when you overload it, it creates a shield around you. Now you need to pay attention to which weapon you want to overload, because once you overload it, you will be essentially sacrificing that weapon. So if you use it, you're losing. This does, however, add greater strategy when you're running through higher difficulties, because pairing these overload abilities with certain perks that can make you invulnerable depending on the ability used can save you when things get tough. I recommend using different overload abilities to see how effective they are in combat. Some of these abilities that can create shields can feel really overpowered, which is good because of how crazy some of the encounters can get late in the game. Now, while I think this is a solid Contra title, and I'm glad that Konami put out a competent game that wasn't trying to be overly ambitious, I cannot recommend this game at this time. Let me explain. Probably my number one issue with this game is its price point. I just can't recommend it at $35. And for whatever reason, my brain just cannot wrap myself around it. I've been trying so hard the last couple of days after playing this game for the last week about trying to say, like, yeah, I can recommend Contra Operation Galuga, but maybe just to only fans of the game. I can't really say something like, hey, go ahead and pick this game up for 35 bucks that you may only play for 2 hours. I just can't do that. There's just not enough content here to justify paying that amount for two major modes in the story and arcade mode that you may only run once or twice. I know that pricing is subjective relative to value, but there are other titles at $20 to $25 you can find on Steam or elsewhere, and I feel like those games can provide more content. Think of a game like Gravity Circuit. I feel like at 20 bucks, it's just like the perfect title, and also you can get more out of its story and also the added content at the end of it. Here, it's like $35 feels like a lot, and I was wondering if there was a hidden mode that I was missing out on. I really think that even if you were playing this solo or with a friend, the lack of variety in this game really hurts it. And even with the added challenge mode, which I think is fun, and I think there's a lot of content there to dig your teeth into, the rewards are going to feel lacking because once you start completing some of these and it's like, oh, here's 100 points, and it took you 10 to 20 minutes to complete because of how challenging they're all pretty much one-hit runs, it can really take the steam out of you. I spoke earlier about the cost of new characters being 8,000 points, and just no matter how you cut it, that price is steep. The speedrun mode, which is only available after you complete the game, costs 15,000 points to unlock. And listen, I am appreciative that everything can be unlocked in-game, but Konami is just really trying to ensure at this point that only the most hardcore Contra fans invest in this game. I mentioned before that you can complete the story mode or the arcade modes in under 2 hours. Listen, once you're done with that, you can just refund it on Steam. I'm not saying that you should, but you absolutely can. Which to me is wild, because $35 is just way too high, and I can't understand for the life of me why Konami thought it was a good idea to price it this way. And here's the thing, I'm not here to bash anything else about this game. When you first saw the trailers for it, I mean, I think we all assumed that this was going to be an arcade title, true to its roots. So I don't think any of us should really expect anything spectacular in regard to production values. I think everything's solid here. There are some weird visual kind of quirks to it, especially with how, herky-jerky the motion is. It really does look like an arcade title. But listen, I didn't care about all that. I think it's all solid, like I said, but a $35 price point is indicating to the consumer that this is a budget plus title, and it's really lacking in that plus section. Now, there are going to be individuals out there who are going to end up loving this game because Konami finally released a solid Contra game, and once again, I applaud them for doing so. They did not mess this up. Shout out to WayForward. Thank goodness they weren't trying to be overly ambitious and try to reinvent the wheel and do all this crazy shit. They really just made a good, solid Contra game. And this should all give us hope for future Konami titles. But this is a game that I can only really recommend until there is a sale. With that being said though, at least we got a solid Contra game, and that's a win in my book. But let me know what you think in the comments. And that is going to do it for this video. If you happen to like the content, please consider sharing, and subscribing. I'm Ken from Pixelated Thoughts, and I'll talk to you next time.